Hi, I'm Bongo and I'm back again with another audio from my channel. Yes, this is the audio, and since I could not think of doing anything else, I'm doing a story reading audio. Like always, I won't tell you the name of the author or the novella, although it's a very famous novella and quite a classic one, generational classic. You have to guess it and comment down below the name and the name of the author, and also like and subscribe to my channel. And now, without much further ado, let's dive in. The first Galactic Empire had endured for tens of thousands of years. It had included all the planets of the galaxy in a centralized rule, sometimes tyrannical, sometimes benevolent, always orderly. Human beings had forgotten that any other form of existence could be. All except Harry Seldon. Harry Seldon was the last great scientist of the First Empire. It was he who brought the science of psychohistory to its full development. Psychohistory was the quintessence of sociology. It was the science of human behavior reduced to mathematical equations. The individual human being is unpredictable, but reactions of human mobs, Seldon found, could be treated statistically. The larger the mob, the greater the accuracy that could be achieved. And the size of the human masses that Seldon worked with was no less than the population of the galaxy, which in his time was numbered in the quintillions. It was Seldon, then, who foresaw, against all common sense and popular belief, that the brilliant empire which seemed so strong was in a state of irremediable decay and decline. He foresaw, or he solved his equations and interpreted its symbols, which amounts to the same thing. The galaxy would pass through a 30,000-year period of misery and anarchy before a unified government would rise once more. He set about to remedy the situation, to bring about a state of affairs that would restore peace and civilization in a single 1,000 of years. Carefully, he set up 2 colonies of scientists that he called foundations. With deliberate intention, he set them up at opposite ends of the galaxy. One foundation was set up in the full daylight of publicity. The existence of the other, the second foundation, was drowned in silence. In Foundation, Nom 1951, and Foundation and Empire, Nom 1952, are told the first 3 centuries of the history of the first foundation. It began as a small community of encyclopedists lost in the emptiness of the outer periphery of the galaxy. Periodically, it faced a crisis in which the variables of human intercourse, of the social and economic currents of the time constricted about it. Its freedom to move lay along only one certain line, and when it moved in that direction, a new horizon of development opened before it. All had been planned by Harry Seldon, long dead now. The first foundation, with its superior science, took over the barbarized planets that surrounded it. It faced the anarchic warlords that broke away from the dying empire and bet them. It faced the remnant of the empire itself under its last strong emperor and its last strong general and bet it. Then it faced something which Harry Seldon could not foresee: the overwhelming power of a single human being. Before him, the first foundation fell, and Harry Seldon's schemes lay part in ruins. There was left the mysterious second foundation, the goal of all such searches. The faithful of what was left of the first foundation must find it for quite another reason. But where was it? That no one knew. Then this is the story of the search of the second foundation. Okay, so this was the prologue. Now we are heading off to chapter 2. Let's see. I deliberately skipped a part so that the plot becomes easier to understand. Chapter 2. The ship was in near readiness. Nothing lacked but the destination. The mule had suggested a return to Trantor, the world that was the hulk of an incomparable galactic metropolis of the hugest empire mankind had ever seen, the dead world that had been capital of all the stars. Pritchard disapproved. It was an old path, sucked dry. He found Bale Channis in the ship's navigation room. The young man's curly hair was just sufficiently disheveled to allow a single curl to droop over the forehead, as if it had been carefully placed there, and even teeth showed in a smile that matched it. Vaguely the stiff officer felt himself harden against the other. Channis's excitement was evident. "Pritchard, it's too far a coincidence," the general said coldly. "I'm not aware of the subject of conversation." "Oh, well then, drag up a chair, old man, and let's get into it. I've been going over your notes. I find them excellent." "How pleasant that you do. But I'm wondering if you have come to the conclusion that I have. Have you ever tried analyzing the problem deductively? I mean, it's all very well to comb the stars at random. And to have done all you did in 5 expeditions is quite a bit of star hopping. That's obvious. But have you calculated how long it would take to go through every known world at this rate?" "Yes, several times." Pritchard felt no urge to meet the young man halfway. But there was the importance of filching the other's mind, the other's uncontrolled and hence unpredictable mind. "Well then, suppose we are analytical about it and try to decide just what we are looking for." "The second foundation," said Pritchard grimly. "A foundation of psychologists," corrected Channis, "who are as weak in physical science as the first foundation was weak in psychology." "Well, you're far from the first foundation, which I'm not. The implications are probably obvious to you. We must find a world which rules by virtue of mental skills and yet which is very backward scientifically." "Is that necessarily so?" questioned Pritchard quietly. "Our own union of worlds isn't backward scientifically, even though our ruler owes his strength to his mental powers." "Because he has the skills of the first foundation to draw upon," came the slightly impatient answer. "And that is the only such reservoir of knowledge in the galaxy. The second foundation must live among the dry crumbs of the broken Galactic Empire. There are no pickings there. So, then you postulate mental power is sufficient to establish their rule over a group of worlds and physical helplessness as well?" "Comparative physical helplessness against the decadent neighboring areas. They are competent to defend themselves against the resurgent forces of the mule with his background of a mature atomic economy. They cannot stand. Else, why is their location so well hidden? Both at the start by the founder, Harry Seldon, and now by themselves. Your own first foundation made no secret of its existence and did not have it made for them. When they were an undefended single city on a lonely planet 300 years ago." The smooth lines of Pritchard's dark face twisted sardonically. "And now that you have finished your deep analysis, would you like a list of all the kingdoms, republics, planet states, and dictatorships of one sort or another in that political wilderness out there that correspond to your description and to several factors besides?" "All this has been considered, then?" Channis lost none of his brashness. "You won't find it here, naturally. But we have a completely worked out guide to the political units of the opposing periphery." "Really? Did you suppose the mule would work entirely hit and miss?" "Well then," and the young man's voice rose in a burst of energy, "what of the oligarchy of Tazenda?" Pritchard touched his ears thoughtfully. "Tazenda? Oh, I think I know it. They are not in the periphery, are they? It seems to me they are fully a third of the way round the center of the galaxy." "Yes, what of that? The records we have place the second foundation at the other end of the galaxy. Space knows it's the only thing we have to go on." Why talk of tangenda anyway? Its angular deviation from the first foundation radian is only about 110 to 120 degrees anyway, nowhere near 180. There's another point in the records. The second foundation was established at Star's End. No such region in the galaxy has ever been located, because it was a local name suppressed later for greater secrecy. Or maybe one invented for the purpose by Seldon and his group. Yet there's some relationship between Star's End and Tazenda, don't you think? A vague similarity in sound? Insufficient. Have you ever been there? No. Yet it is mentioned in your records? Where? Oh yes, but that was merely to take on food and water. There was certainly nothing remarkable about that world. Did you land at the ruling planet, the center of government? I couldn't possibly say. Channis brooded about it under the other's cold gaze. Then, would you look at the lens with me for a moment? Certainly. The lens was perhaps the newest feature of the interstellar cruisers of the day. Actually, it was a complicated calculating machine which could throw on a screen a reproduction of the night sky as seen from any point of the galaxy. Channis adjusted the coordinate points, and the wall lights of the pilot room were extinguished. In the dim red light at the control board of the lens, Channis' face glowed ruddily. Pritcher sat in the pilot's seat, long legs crossed, face lost in the gloom. Slowly, as the induction period passed, the points of the light brightened on the screen, and then they were thick and bright with the generously populated star groupings of the galaxy center. This, explained Channis, is the winter night sky as seen from the Trantor. This is the important point that, as far as I know, has been neglected so far in your search. All intelligent orientation must start from Trantor as 0 point. Trantor was the capital of the Galactic Empire, even more so scientifically and culturally than politically, and therefore the significance of any descriptive name should stem 9 times out of 10 from a Trantorian orientation. You'll remember in this connection that although Seldon was from Helicon towards the periphery, his group worked on Trantor itself. What is it you are trying to show me? Pritcher's level of voice plunged icily into the gathering enthusiasm of the other. The map will explain it. Do you see the dark nebula? The shadow of his arm fell upon the screen, which took on the bespanglement of the galaxy. The pointing finger ended on a tiny patch of black that seemed a hole in the speckled fabric of light. The stellographical records call it Pellet's Nebula. Watch it. I'm going to expand the image. Pritcher had watched the phenomenon of lens image expansion before he still caught his breath. It was like being at the visiplet of a spaceship storming through a horribly crowded galaxy without entering hyperspace. The stars diverged towards them from a common center, flayed outwards, and tumbled off the edge of the screen. Single points became doubled, then globular. Hazy patches dissolved into myriad points, and always that illusion of motion. Channis spoke through it all. You'll notice that we are moving along the direct line from Trantor to Pellet's Nebula, so that in effect we are still looking at the stellar orientation equivalent to that of Trantor. There is probably a slight error because of the gravitic deviation of light that I have math to calculate for, but I'm sure it can't be that significant. The darkness was spreading over the screen as the rate of magnification slowed. The stars slipped off the 4 ends of the screen in a regretful leave-taking. At the rims of the growing nebula, the brilliant universe of stars shone abruptly in token for that light which was merely hidden behind the swirling, unradiating atom fragments of sodium and calcium that filled cubic parsecs of space. And Channis pointed again. This had been called the mouth by the inhabitants of that region of space, and that is significant because it is only from the Trantorian orientation that it looks like a mouth. What he indicated was a rift in the body of the nebula, shaped like a ragged, grinning mouth in profile, outlined by the blazing glory of the starlight with which it was filled. Follow the mouth, said Channis. Follow the mouth towards the gullet as it narrows down to a thin, splintering line of light. Again the screen expanded a trifle until the nebula stretched away from the mouth to block off all the screen. But that narrow trickle and Channis's finger silently followed it down to where it struggled to a halt. And then, as his finger continued moving onward to a spot where one single star sparked lonesomely, and there his finger halted, for beyond there was blackness unrelieved. "Stars end," said the young man simply. "The fabric of the nebula is thin, and the light of that one star finds its way through in just one direction, to shine on Trantor." "You're trying to tell me that?" The voice of the Muse General died in suspicion. "I'm not trying. That is Tagenda. Stars end." The lights went on. The lens flicked off. Pritcher reached Channis in 3 long strides. "What made you think of this?" And Channis leaned back in his chair with a queerly puzzled expression on his face. "It was accidental. I'd like to take intellectual credit for this, but it was only accidental. In any case, however it happens, it fits. According to a reference, Tagenda is an oligarchy. It rules 27 inhabited planets. It is not advanced scientifically, and most of all, it is an obscure world that had adhered to a strict neutrality in the local politics of the stellar region and is not an expansionist. I think we ought to see it." "Have you informed the General of this?" "No, nor shall we. We are in space now, about to make the first hop." Pritcher, in sudden horror, sprang to the visiplate. Cold space met his eyes when he adjusted it. He gazed fixedly at the view, then turned. Automatically his hand reached for the hard, comfortable curve of the butt of his blaster. "By whose order?" "By my order, General." It was the first time Channis had ever used the other's title. "While I was engaging you here, you probably felt no acceleration, because it came at the moment I was expanding the field of the lens, and you undoubtedly imagined it to be an illusion of the apparent star motion. Why? Just what are you doing? What was the point of your nonsense about Tagenda then?" "That was no nonsense. I was completely serious. We are going there. We left today because we are scheduled to leave 3 days from now. General, you won't believe there is a second foundation." "And I do." "You are merely following the general's or other general's orders without faith." "I recognize a serious danger. The second foundation has now had 5 years to prepare. How they have prepared, I don't know. But what if they have agents on Kalgan? If I carry about in my mind the knowledge of the whereabouts of the second foundation, they may discover that. My life might be no longer safe, and I have a great affection for my life. Even on a thin and remote possibility such as that, I would rather play safe. So, no one knows of Tagenda but you, and you found out only after we were out in space, and even so there is question of the crew." Channis was smiling again, ironically, in obviously complete control of the situation. Pritcher's hand fell away from his blaster, and for a moment a vague discomfort pierced him. "We kept him from action. What deadened him?" "There was a time when he was a rebellious and unpromoted captain of the First Foundation's commercial empire, when it would have been himself, rather than Channis, who would have taken prompt and daring action such as that." Was the mule right? Was his controlled mind so concerned with obedience as to lose initiative? He felt a thickening despondency drive him down into a strange lassitude. He said, "Well done. However, you will consult me in the future before making decisions of this nature." The flickering signal caught his attention. "That's the engine room," said Channis casually. "They warmed up on 5 minutes notice, and I asked them to let me know if there was any trouble. Want to hold the fort?" Pritcher nodded mutely, and cognited in the sudden loneliness on the evils of approaching 50. The visipet was sparsely starred. The main body of the galaxy misted one end, What if he was free? But he reconciled in horror at the thought. Chief Engineer Huxley looked sharply at the young, ununiformed man who carried himself with the assurance of a fleet officer and seemed to be in a position of authority. Huxley, as a regular fleet man, from the days his chin had dripped milk, generally confused authority with specific insignia. But the general had appointed this man, and the general was, of course, the last word, the only word for that matter. Not even subconsciously did he question that. Emotional control went deep. He handed Channis the little oval object without a word. Channis lifted it and smiled engagingly. "You're a Foundation man, aren't you, Chief?" "Yes, sir. I served in the Foundation fleet 18 years before the first citizen took over. Foundation training in engineering, qualified technician, first class, Central School on Anasirion." "Good enough. And you found this on the communication circuit when I asked you to look?" "Yes, sir." "Does it belong there?" "No, sir." "Then what is it?" "A hypertracer, sir." "That's not enough. I'm not a Foundation man." "What is it?" "It's a device to allow the ship to be traced through hyperspace. In other words, we can be followed anywhere." "Yes, sir." "All right. It's a recent invention, isn't it? It was developed by one of the research institutes set up by the first citizen, wasn't it?" "I believe so, sir." "And its workings are a government secret, right?" "I believe so, sir." Yet here it is. Intriguing. Channis tossed the hypertracer methodically from one hand to other for a few seconds. Then sharply he held it out. "Take it then, and put it back exactly where you found it, and exactly how you found it. Understand? And then forget about this incident entirely." The chief choked down his near automatic salute, turned sharply and left. This ship bounded through the galaxy, its path a wide-spaced dotted line through the stars. The dots refer to were the scant stretches of 10 to 60 light seconds spent in normal space, and between them stretched the 100 and up light-year gaps that represented the hops through hyperspace. Bale Channis sat at the control panel of the lens and felt again the involuntary surge of near worship at the contemplation of it. He was not a Foundation man, and the interplay of forces at the twist of a knob or the breaking of a contact was not second nature to him. Not that the lens ought to bore even a Foundation man. Within its unbelievably compact body were enough electronic circuits to pinpoint accurately 100 million separate stars in exact relationship to each other. And as if that were not a feat in itself, it was further capable of translating any given portion of the galactic field along any of the three spatial axes, or to rotate any portion of the field about a center. It was because of that the lens had performed a near revolution in the interstellar travel. In the younger days of interstellar travel, the calculation of each hop through hyperspace meant any amount of work from a day to a week, and the larger portion of such work was a more or less precise calculation of the ship's position on the galactic scale of reference. Essentially, that meant the accurate observation of at least three widely spaced stars, the position of which, with reference to the arbitrary galactic 000, when known. And it is the word known that is the catch. To any who know the star field well, from one certain reference point, stars are as individual as people. Jump 10 parsecs, however, and not even your own sun is recognizable. It may not even be visible. The answer was, of course, spectroscopic analysis. For centuries, the main object of interstellar engineering was the analysis of the light signature of more and more stars in greater and greater detail. With this, the growing precision of the hop itself, standard routes of travel through the galaxy were adopted, and interstellar travel became less of an art and more of a science. And yet, even under the Foundation, with improved calculating machines and a new method of mechanically scanning the star field for a known light signature, it sometimes took days to locate three stars and then calculate positions in regions not previously familiar to the pilot. It was the lens that changed all of that. For one thing, it required only a single known star. For another, even a space tyro such as Channis could operate it. The nearest sizable star at the moment was Win Centauri. According to Hopf calculations, and on the visiplate now, a bright star was centered. Channis hoped that it was Win Centauri. The field screen of the lens was thrown directly next that of the visiplate, and with careful fingers, Channis punched out the coordinates of Win Centauri. He closed a relay, and the star field sprang to a bright view. In it too, a brighter star was centered, but otherwise there seemed no relationship. He adjusted the lens along the z-axis and expanded the field to where the photometer showed both the centered stars to be of equal brightness. Channis looked for a second star, sizably bright, on the visiplate and found one on the field screen to correspond. Slowly, he rotated the screen to similar angular deflection. He twisted his mouth and rejected the result with a grimace. Again he rotated, and another bright star was brought into position, and a third. And then he grinned. That did it. Perhaps a specialist with trained relationship perception might have clicked first try, but he had settled for 3. That was the adjustment. In the final step, the two fields overlapped and merged into a sea of not quite rightness. Most of the stars were close doubles, but the fine adjustment did not take long. The double stars melted together, one field remained, and the ship's position could now be read directly off the dials. The entire procedure had taken less than half an hour. Channis found General Pritcher in his private quarters. The general was quite apparently preparing for bed. He looked up. News? Not particularly. We'll be at Tajanda in another hop. I know. I don't want to bother you if you are turning in, but have you looked through the film we picked up in Sil? General Pritcher cast a disparaging look at the article in question, where it lay in its black case upon his low bookshelf. Yes? And what do you think? I think that if there was ever any science to history, it has been quite lost in the region of the galaxy. Channis grinned broadly. I know what you mean. Rather barren, isn't it? Not if you enjoy personal chronicles of rulers. Probably unreliable, I should say, in both directions. Where history concerns mainly personalities, the drawings become either black or white according to the interests of the writer. I find it all remarkably useless. But there is talk about Tajanda. That's the point I tried to make when I gave you the film. It's the only one I could find that even mentioned them. All right. They have good rulers and bad. They have conquered a few planets, won some battles, lost a few. There is nothing distinctive about them. I don't think much of your theory, Channis. But you've missed a few points. Didn't you notice that they never formed coalitions? They always remained completely outside the politics of this corner of the star swarm. As you say, they conquered a few planets, but then they stopped. And that without any startling defeat of consequence. It's just as if they spread out enough to protect themselves, but not enough to attract attention. Very well, came the unemotional response. I have no objection to landing. At the worst, a little lost time. Oh no, at the worst, complete defeat. If it is the second foundation, remember, it would be a world of space knows how many mules. What do you plan to do? Land on some minor subject planet, find out as much as we can about Tajanda first, then improvise from that. All right, no objection. If you don't mind now, I would like to get the lights out. Channis left with a wave of his hand, and in the darkness of a tiny room in an island of driving metal lost in the vastness of space, General Pritcher remained awake, following the thoughts that led him through such fantastic reaches. If everything he had so painfully decided were true, and how all the facts were beginning to fit, then Tajanda was the second foundation. There was no way out. But how? How? Could it be Tajenda, an ordinary world, one without distinction, a slum lost amid the wreckage of an empire, a splinter among the fragments, remembered, as from a distance, the general's shriveled face and his thin voice as he used to speak to the old Foundation psychologist Ebling Miss, the one man who had maybe learned the secret of the second Foundation. Pritcher recalled the tension of the mule's words. It was as if astonishment had overwhelmed Miss. It was as though something about the second Foundation had surpassed all his expectations, had driven in a direction completely different from what he might have assumed. If I could only have read his thoughts rather than his emotions, yet the emotions were plain. And above everything else was this vast empire. Vast, and above everything else was this vast surprise. Surprise was the keynote, something supremely astonishing. And now came this boy, this grinning youngster, glibly joyful about Tajenda and its undistinguished subnormality. And he had to be right. He had to, otherwise nothing made sense. Pritcher's last conscious thought had a touch of grimness. That hypertracer along the etheric tube was still there. He had checked it 1 hour back, with Channis well out of the way. So this is the end of chapter 2, and the next is chapter 3, and before that we have a second interlude. Please let me know down below in the comments if you want me to continue. Well, let me tell you in a short, it is actually Tajenda only, which is a little bit spoiler, which is the second Foundation. And when the ship reaches there, they'll find that Ebling Miss, very old and shriveled, is still there. He's still doing his research and trying to find the second Foundation, although he doesn't know that where he's staying, that is only the second Foundation. And there are people from the first Foundation there who can, who has power of mind control. And together they will learn that yes, they have actually found it. Hi there. So I hope you loved the reading, because I loved it. And it's a sci-fi novel that is a science fiction, and I think it's divided into 3 books, and each book tells the lore, carries on the lore of the first Foundation, of the second Foundation, and the Galactic Empire, and how it lasted, how it reformed, and how it finally researched. And tell me down below in the comments if you want to hear the rest of it, or if you don't want to hear the rest of it, I can do a plot summary of the whole book. It was also made into movies, so it's quite popular. So yeah, bye for today, ciao for today, and let me know what you want to hear next. So I don't know I should mention it right now or not, but I'm going through a lot of tough times now. The thing is, I lost my driving license the day before yesterday, and it was a LMV license which I needed to get a upgrade or any other license, because I sold my car long ago in 2022. It was nothing much. It was an Alto 800 car, but it was very much loved by me. But I had to sell it. And then now I thought of switching to scooties, and I was dealing with a scooty seller who turned out to be an absolute scammer, and he scammed me of 500 rupees deal lock money, which I delivered to him via UPI. There's a lot of background noises, please pardon. And now my mom is talking to phone with my aunt, which you can hear in the background. So yeah, that's that. And I had to go for the license. I had to go to my nearest police station, lodge a general diary, and get a copy. And I now have to go to RTO to verify all the documents and renew my license. They will issue me a duplicate license, and then upgrade the license to a two-wheeler one, a selling platform, second hand, because I'm a beginner, I don't know how to ride two-wheelers. I have balancing issues, so I thought of buying a second-hand one, and the guy turned out to be a complete scammer. He was like acting very rude and refused to give me the deal lock money back. Well, so that's that. It's a little bit I shared because you, my viewers, I hope will, empathize. So, hope I didn't overburden anyone. It's just a bit of sharing. Ciao.